Holy Saints, Ricky Saints is the new NXT North American champion. Well, we will get into it. This is a Wrestle Extra. Yo, this is a Wrestle Extra. I'm your boy, A Dazzle, the Black Wrestling Advocate, always joined by my tag team partner. Say his name, he shall appear. The omnipresent man that is Gerard Bonner. Ricky Saints goes from AEW obscurity to NXT North American champion. Joined NXT in mid-Feb within just over 40 days. Record time, he is an NXT champion, specifically the North American champion. Defeated Sean Spears, another man who came from AEW obscurity. And Ricky Saints defeated another man who came from AEW obscurity. In terms of the record, in terms of how many days it was from he signed to becoming a champion, who was Ethan Page. And of course, Ethan Page had to make it known that he was a little bit upset and attacked Ricky Saints straight after he won the North American Championship. Are we? And I'm sure we are. We're about to get a former AEW competitors triple threat match at NXT Stand and Deliver for the NXT North American Championship. Do you see that happening?
I don't know. Like the Stand and Deliver card seems to be so unpredictable. Again, what we thought the Stand and Deliver card would look like, we got at Roadblock. So everything now is up in the air. I think it probably would be dangerous for them to have too many triple threat matches on Stand and Deliver. I mean, your main event's already a triple threat match for the NXT Championship. And then you have a number of triple threat matches happening WrestleMania weekend, which we'll get into. So I think they have to be careful not to overdo that. So in my mind, I don't see a triple threat match happening. I see perhaps Ricky Saints and Ethan Page. I see that potentially happening. And given all that Ethan Page will be doing that weekend, it could be a belt collecting championship kind of weekend for Ethan Page. So, yeah, I see that. But huge congratulations to Ricky Saints. I mean, when we talked about it last week, it seemed like one of two options. Either he was going to win the title or this was going to be some sort of weird moment to get him to win the title at Stand and Deliver. I was honestly shocked that they pulled the trigger that close to Stand and Deliver. So, everything I'm thinking should happen that makes sense. What we've known historically is kind of all being thrown up in the air right now. But one thing I think we all can agree on is Ricky Saints deserves to be North American champion. It didn't make sense to wait a long time to put a title on him. He certainly has earned that. His star level, his star quality earned that. And so congratulations to him. I don't want to say, poor things about the previous champion who this was his first title defense. I mean, talk about a transitional champion, poor Sean Spears, but it is what it is. It happens that way. And we've been seeing, I think at NXT, just a lot of championships revolving. And that's happening because you have so much talent that's there right now.
Right.
That it's almost hard to have a lengthy title reign in that situation. But all of that said, congratulations to Ricky Saints, the new NXT North American champion.
It's crazy. In an interview he's done very recently, I think in the last few days or so, especially not over since becoming the champion, North American champion, he's already kind of, talked about what he wants to achieve in WWE as a whole. He already wants to become, he says he wants to become a WWE champion and all of these things. And in that same interview, he was saying, and must have been asked the question about, when did, discussions start with WWE and whatnot. And as much as we all kind of had it in our own minds that since this time last year, he was set to go to WWE. You know, the last time we had an AEW match was February of last year. We didn't see him at all, but we saw him appear at WrestleMania in the boxes and behind Cody Rhodes. And we know that he's got a good friendship with Jade Cargill, who recently, at the time, appeared in WWE as well from AEW. But he was saying that, you know, he never had any real discussions with anyone in WWE up until literally the week that, or the day that he was officially released.
Yeah.
From AEW. And of course, we saw him literally the next day, within 24 hours of that announcement, make his first appearance on NXT. With all of that being rushed or fast tracked as it was, you feel that him winning the championship only 42 days after being signed, do you feel as though that was too quick? Could we have given a bit more time? And again, with the collateral damage of Sean Spears only holding it for a few days and only having one defense, well, not even having an actual defense, or was it one defense against?
Yeah, I think
was defense, right?
I think that was the only defense.
Okay, so he didn't actually have defense of the championship.
Yeah.
You feel as this whole thing with Ricky Starks kind of happened too quick, or could it have waited a little bit longer?
So I think this is where we're going to have to start being honest about star power. And so when we do that, you look at a Sean Spears, you look at a Ricky Saints. It's not the same discussion in terms of star power,
right?
You know, and even in terms of ability. I think, quite frankly, Sean Spears is having one of the best career runs he's ever had. You know, finally getting a group, making that group something special. You know, he's the lead man. He's got the experience. They've been doing damage. They've been beating up the family and Tony D. You know, he ends up winning a championship in the process. That's a great thing. And that took Sean Spears a long time. Ricky Saints has for so long been one of those guys that we've all said is a superstar without question. I mean, you noticed it if you followed him in the NWA when he was a TV champion there, you know, and then when he got his opportunity in AEW, we were excited. You know, he held the FTW championship for such a long time. And we were just like, okay, that's cool that we get to see him with a championship, but it's not recognized. So what does it mean? And then, of course, he gets the opportunity to become a tag team champion. And, you know, you look at those things and you go, it's clear that there's a star in the making. At one point, we thought he was going to be the man on Collision because it looked like Collision was being built around him. But he never had the backing that he believed in. So that's why him coming to WWE and NXT made all the think about how quick this had to have happened. They didn't even mention him by name for the first 2 weeks. Right. You know, and so everybody's guessing, do you call him Ricky? Do you call him Ricky Saints, Ricky Starks? What do you call him? So they knew they wanted to do something special with him. And again, I think with guys like Ethan Page and Ricky Starks, there are statements that are being made. And the statements are, we know how to handle star power. Okay. It's almost a situation where it's like, you know, if you worked at a job and that job didn't treat you right and the other people were scouting you or they had their eyes on you, man, when they get you on, first thing they're doing is they're giving you a promotion. You know, they're putting you in a position where they say, we're going to obviously allow your great skills to be really on display, and we're going to maximize that for our company. I think that's totally what NXT did. So, yeah, does 2 weeks make a difference on that? Maybe, maybe not. Again, turnover is happening fast. So I think it made sense. You know, it didn't feel like somebody who didn't deserve it getting propped there because they came from a certain place. Right. It felt like this makes sense because this guy's already a star. So put this championship on this star. Makes sense.
It does. It definitely feels like that. And, as much as we were saying this last week that, we didn't expect it to happen as quick or happen last week, we knew it was going to happen. We knew it was kind of set in stone. He was going to win this championship from Sean Spears. But we thought that maybe, as you said earlier, something was going to happen in the match and we'd get the match and then a title win at Stand and Deliver. We as we've mentioned, we've seen Sean Spears as NXT North American champion. We've seen Ethan Page as the NXT champion. You've got Lexus King, formerly Brian Pillman Jr. with the Heritage Cup Championship. We see what they've done with Penta on Raw, Intercontinental Championship match happening at WrestleMania. Ray Phoenix makes his debut last week on SmackDown. A big thing. It's almost like, they're basically like doing exactly the same thing that they did with Penta, but on SmackDown with Phoenix.
Sure.
Do you feel as though any of these guys who are former AEW guys that felt as though they were underutilized for on whatever level you want to see it, do you feel as though these guys now having achievements and being pushed the way they have is justified by those stars' abilities and star power, or could be seen as some kind of jab at AEW in general?
I think we have to understand this. Billionaires don't fight with millionaires, right? Like they just don't. They're different classes. They just are, And so you're looking at a company like WWE and all that it has accomplished. There's not a need for them to stick it to AEW, right? Because it's two different. It's honestly, you could make the argument it's two different audiences. They're not necessarily appealing to the same fan base and trying to accomplish the same thing. Now, here's where I feel like all of the people that you've mentioned have gotten what they've deserved because they all didn't get the meteoric push. If you look at Lexus King, he went a long time before he won any sort of championship.
He did.
And they gave him a chance to really kind of settle into who Lexus King is. He went through, am I a good guy? Am I a bad guy? Do I want to change my ways? Do I want to be like my dad? Like they gave him a chance to develop. I would even make the argument, one of the names that you didn't mention was Jade Cargill, who might have been one of the first of those outside of Cody. And I think in all of those cases, Jade, Ricky Starks, Penta, Ray Phoenix, their star power and ability were taken into effect when it came time for their push. So Jade was a massive signing. Then we didn't see her, and it was a good, 6 to 9 months before we actually saw her get in the ring and be showcased. And so I think, again, what WWE has done a great job of is figuring out, all right, what is it that is necessary? What do we need? And how do we showcase these people in the best light possible? And so if that means they need to go to the PC and do work for 6 months, okay, do that. If it means that they're immediately TV ready, do that. If it means that they're ready to be shot straight, to the stratosphere, do that. I honestly think when you look at like a Penta was a different kind of signing for WWE.
Very different.
And so I think that they wanted to give him the opportunity to see how is this going to connect with our audience. And the ways that he has connected has been so where they go, okay, take him to the moon, And I think it laid the groundwork for Ray Phoenix to come in. And so I think, you look at Ricky Saints, even Ethan Page, Ethan Page proved himself and they saw and I think timing was important. Ethan Page coming in when he did as a veteran inside of an NXT space made far more sense than placing him on Raw or SmackDown.
For sure.
I will even make the argument that the same is true for Ricky Saints, right? You put Ricky Saints inside of NXT, he's the veteran. You put him inside of Raw or SmackDown, not so much. So I think you give him this chance to be presented as a star against the backdrop of those who are maybe rookies or who are younger or what have you. And now he gets the kind of veteran treatment and the star-making treatment that he deserves. So to answer your question, I think all of these examples coming from AEW to WWE, it was not one size fits all. I think they were each presented based on their abilities, because even Sean Spears was handled differently. Like he got the really cool surprise return, which was the good shocker and all of those things. But they didn't shoot him straight to a championship or a main event. You know, they kind of worked him out to figure out, okay, let's present Sean Spears and not Ty Dillinger. And, you know, and they did a great job with that. So I think they've handled each of those cases well.
Yeah. And you know, it's, and I can even answer my own question as well in saying that it wasn't just about, you know, it being a dig at AEW. They've just handled it better. They kind of maybe had a plan. And as you said, they've tested the waters first of all, then seen when it has worked and what can work and what doesn't work, and then gone with it. I mean, you know, we even have examples of where it hasn't worked. That being Andrade.
Yes.
You know, I know we kind of came from WWE to go to AEW and then come back, but we all had this big expectation because, again, someone that we felt was underutilized in AEW, and expected him to kind of come back to WWE with this big push or some kind of big engine behind him. And at first, I believe there probably was, and there was some kind of plan and an idea, and it just hasn't worked out. And we, you know, he is where he is at the moment, which is unfortunate, but at the same time, you know, it is what it is. With quite a lot of the guys that we've mentioned, like you said, you know, just to reiterate what you said, everyone has been handled very differently. No one's two runs have been exactly the same. The only person you can probably say that for, or the two people, is Penta and Phoenix.
And we're still early at theirs.
And it's still very, very early. And I've already seen, in my mind, where in the first few weeks of Penta being on Raw, it felt like he was going to get this outrageous push. Whereas now it's kind of like they've pushed him, found a space for him, and they're like, okay, let's keep him here for now. And it's not been a negative, and it's not a negative in the slightest. It's almost like, okay, this is the perfect place to keep him. Let's keep him there, but keep him relevant. See him every week, but let's just keep him here. Let's not go too crazy.
But
let's just do what we're doing, and it's worked nicely. And for me, it makes every single one of these people that we've talked about look back on their AEW time and think, so why didn't that happen then? What was missing? And I'm sure this is a question we can't really answer unless we're in the back and kind of, you know all of the stats and in the back and the politics and the people in charge and whatever. But you look at it and you're like, so why wasn't Ricky Starks a TNT champion, or you know what I mean, or Ethan Page didn't win some kind of championship or whatever it is? Why were they not used, some of these guys, especially like your Lexus King, used on ROH a certain way or whatnot? And it's perplexing and unfortunate in all of that. It's crazy to me. It's crazy.
Well, I think the easy answer, without getting into a lot of specifics, is, you know, if you have a movie or a play or what have you, ultimately the participants in the presentation are a direct result of the vision of the director and the vision of the producer. And so what you can easily say in these situations is you've got different visionaries, and different visionaries see things differently, you know, and because they see things differently, it's very easy to understand how in one place you might not be viewed a star, but in another place you can. You know, it's like that in relationships and things like that. You know, there are people who just don't see the value in you, and that's okay. Then you find a space that does, and you go, wow. And then you wonder,
Mhm.
where was this all the time?
Right. Yeah, true.
There has to be that kind of vision. And I think that's the case with all of the people that you've mentioned that have come from AEW over to WWE. There was a vision for who they could be, and then there was the structure in place to allow execution.
Mm.
And it doesn't feel like that was the case in AEW with those names that you've mentioned. And the thing is, you can look in AEW and you can see people who we can go, why hasn't that person been a champion or in a championship presentation or in a story that we would come back to check on every week? It's got everything to do with vision and then the ability to execute.
And we can say the same kind of on the other way around
Sure.
with Ricochet, with
Absolutely.
with Swerve,
Absolutely.
and a few others where it has worked out a bit better for them. You can kind of maybe argue the whole, even Adam Cole as well. Injury kind of obviously upset, his trajectory, but we can now see him as the new TNT champion. We always, they've always had a love and a liking for Adam Cole and wanted to push him, to the top and stuff. So yeah, we can definitely see the difference in the visions and visionaries and people having different ideas of stars and how to present them in different ways. And I think for me, even with a Ricky Starks, going back to Ricky Saints, even that he always felt like he was a WWE guy, if that makes sense. I kind of almost felt the way he was, the way he presents himself, his style, all of that just felt like he should have been in WWE the whole time. I think the same can be said about MJF, for example, as well.
Sure.
So it's interesting. It's interesting to see, but it's good to see for all of these guys that are, now making headways and having championships and long storylines and good presentations behind them. It's amazing. Keeping with NXT, we talked about the triple threat. We mentioned it very quickly for the NXT championship. Obafemi, Javon Evans, Trick Williams. We were saying last week that there's a possibility Trick Williams could be a part of this whole Dark State because he hasn't been attacked by Dark State. I think we need to stop talking about NXT on this show because everything that we say goes the complete opposite.
It's great. It is great.
It's great. Amazing. It's amazing. So obviously last week on NXT, all three men kind of had this whole confrontation, and then the lights go down. Dark State appear, enter the ring, and attack Trick Williams to kill. I feel kill this whole thing of him possibly being a part or a leader or some kind of thing for Dark State, and we see a very, very interesting 6-man tag that's supposed to be happening on tonight's show with the three guys participating. Trick, Javon, and Oba will team together. That's just chaos. That's what Dark State are about.
It is
against 3 members of Dark State. My first question is, who are the 3 members going to be? And after that, what does this do for Dark State, and where does it take them? Because for me, I almost feel as though them not having or potentially having Trick as their leader or someone of that ilk in NXT as their leader could very quickly throw them into some level of obscurity in my mind. What do you think? Who do you think are going to be the 3 to participate, and where do you think this is going for them?
Here's what's scary. It almost doesn't matter which 3 it is. Because like with for instance, Dion Lennox, whatever you saw about him before kind of means nothing now, because this is a completely different attitude, a completely different perspective. You look at Cutler James, for instance, who, we get to see weekly on LFG. I think it's wild that he's a part of this group while LFG is still airing, because it says a lot, right? It says that maybe he didn't win, but he's still very much in, which I think there's a lot to be said for that. So I think all of the members of the group are extremely dangerous. And because there's not a lot of tape to study them, that's going to be something. I think them being in this match, their first match is against the main event of Stand and Deliver. That speaks volumes in terms of where this group is being placed. You know, you could have given them 3 random guys to fight this week, you know, to show how great they are. Instead, their first match is against the top 2 contenders for the NXT championship. One is a 2-time NXT champion, and then the current NXT champion, who's the longest reigning men's North American champion. This is significant. It's a very significant moment for the members of Dark State. So to your question about, do they need a leader like Trick Williams? If this match goes in a way where they are able to either get a win over these guys or do some significant damage where they leave them laying, they may not need a leader. This may be just us getting to learn who all of these guys are, which, by the way, I think they did a great job of that last week. Letting the family, you know, say, hey, we've done our research. Here are these guys. Brilliant way to do that.
Brilliant.
Absolutely brilliant. Because it's like, oh, intel, but wait a minute. We're learning their names. We're learning where they're from. These are things that normally the commentary team would do, you know? So I love the innovative way that they're doing it. But we may not need a big name leader if these guys are able to showcase what they can do. You know, one of those 4, and I think it's Saquon Sugars, yeah. He could be the leader. I mean, he's certainly the charismatic one when they're talking, and it feels like he's the guy who's kind of pulling the strings. So it could be a thing where we start learning about him and learning, you know, because you need new talent to be able to raise up in that particular space. And if Trick is on his way out, and we're just, you know, extrapolating at this point, if Oba's on his way out, and again, we're just guessing, let's get a new name that we now have to fear. And it could be Saquon Sugars. So I don't think that they need Trick as much as it makes sense to us. And let's be clear, this still isn't ruling out that Trick Williams isn't the leader. Just because he got beat down, sometimes people sacrifice themselves.
It does happen.
So it could be done in a space of a swerve. I don't know. But we'll see. We'll see. There's a lot to unfold here and unpack over these next couple of weeks. But tonight should be interesting to watch.
Yeah, for sure. I think for myself, you know, first seeing the group and seeing a Dion Lennox, you know, you probably think that he was the leader because he was the guy that we've seen on NXT before.
Yes.
So that's the familiar face for most people, for the majority. With Saquon Sugars, obviously, he's, for those that don't know, he's the more experienced one. You know, he's coming from the Carolinas. You know, I think it was 2 years in a row he won the Carolinas Wrestler of the Year. I believe it was 2022, 23 as well. So, you know, it makes a little bit more sense in terms of experience why he would be some kind of lead or front man. And it's clear when he talks, my God, it's like you can tell he's been doing this for a long time. It just comes off the tongue, just so simple, easy, so charismatic. It's almost like he could teach Trick and Javon how to speak. Very easily. Both guys have found their, you know, Trick and Javon have kind of found their space a little bit, but you know, Sugars just has it, just has it there. It's crazy. And yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see which 3 they put out there, and I can definitely see a strong possibility in them coming away with a win, based on the lack of camaraderie with the, you know, the 3 guys that they're coming up against. So that would be a big statement for them. I see the family possibly either getting involved or showing up in some way at some point, and then maybe that taking them to, you know, stand and deliver in some kind of capacity as well. So it's going to be very interesting. Another thing to look out for and expect a stand and deliver is the ladder match It's six woman ladder match.
6 women, yeah.
For the now vacated Women's North American Championship. A big surprise that happened was Kalani Jordan beating Roxanne Perez clean. I did not expect that at all. What are your possible predictions in terms of who else would be a part of this 6-woman ladder match and a possible winner?
So I know we had talked before, and I felt like we got this one right, where we talked about the potential of a ladder match for the vacant North American Championship, because we just felt like it wasn't going to make sense for Vakor to do double duty there at Stand and Deliver. We didn't know it was going to happen Tuesday night. With that said, some very interesting things. I have to say, I think Jada Parker's got to end up in there somehow. Because I know it's supposed to be Jada tonight and her and Jordan Grace, which I think is going to make for a fantastic match. I imagine Jordan Grace will win that, will then be named the #1 contender for the NXT Women's Championship. But Jada Parker gets herself in a qualifying match of some sort for the North American Championship. And honestly, I think Jada Parker's the pick to win it. I think she's the pick to win it. She has been red hot. You talk about someone, male or female, on the NXT brand who came in as a rookie and has been catapulted and has proven that they can handle it. It's Jada Parker. It is absolutely Jada Parker. You know, she took Vakor to the limit last week or 2 weeks ago. And had it not been for Jordan Grace, we could have had a different scenario in terms of that. So I think Jada Parker absolutely walks out of Stand and Deliver with the NXT Women's North American Championship. You've already got Zarya in there, which there was a part of me that was surprised that she got the win over Lash Legend, but it feels like Lash and Jakara are very much on this tag team space. And we'll see them hopefully with tag team gold. So yeah, you got Zarya. I'm sure we'll have Sol Ruka in there somehow. I don't know. I'm trying to remember some of the other people who could potentially be there. I don't know if we'll see oh gosh, her name is leaving me now.
I believe Fallon Henley should be in there at some point.
I'm sure she'll be in there. I'm sure she'll be in there. Gigi Dolan is who I'm thinking about. I'm sure she'll find her way in there. There are a couple of other names, but to me, Jada Parker is the standout to win this whole thing. I think you throw in a TNA knockout in there to just kind of really upset the apple cart a bit. That'd be amazing. Oh my Lord. Oh man. Oh no. Though this could happen though. I shudder to say the name. Tessa Blanchard.
Nah.
No. Here's why. She's been doing work over on TNA with JC Jane.
Yep. Yeah.
So
and Cora Jade as well.
And Cora Jade, who I think Cora Jade might find herself in there. I don't think it's 100% out of the question. Would it be wildly controversial? Yes. And I also think that that TKO and WWE are really doing a good job of trying to stay away from unnecessary controversy. And I think Tessa Blanchard would be unnecessary controversy.
Okay.
But you just given her history, that's still not fully clear, and people not, and I don't think that they would want especially in a match with a Jada Parker, I don't think that they would want the crowd to hijack it the way they would in Vegas. True. So as wild of a choice as Tessa Blanchard would be, I don't think I don't think they'll pull the trigger for that reason specifically. But I do think making room for a TNA knockout in this would not be a bad idea.
I think a TNA knockout would be a good idea, of course.
I
definitely.
know who. Lei Ying Lee, the former Xia Li.
Okay.
That makes sense.
They've been pushing her quite a bit. Yeah, they have. They've been
have
pushing her quite a bit on TNA. That wouldn't be a bad choice. Tasha Steelz is also still someone.
Tasha Steelz. I love that. I love that choice as well.
Possibly. But we know Kelani's in there. Zari's in there. We have a strong feeling Fallon's going to be in there. Possibly Cora Jade. You've got Sol Ruka. I think that with her and Zarya, that kind of whole thing might kind of go south, and then we get a rivalry with them, and then that's 5, and then a 6th being a knockout. I think would be a very good way to do it. I mean, names have been mentioned in the comments, like an Easy Dame, Carmen Petrovic, who's kind of been on a bit of a run, or been seen on TV often over the last couple of months as well. So there are still quite a few names who could end up in there, and it would be definitely interesting. But I think I'm on the same space as you in terms of Jada coming out as the winner. I think if she ends up in the match, I think it would only be right that she's the winner. The only other person I could possibly see would be Zarya. But again, if Sol Ruka's in there, I think that's a bigger story or focus for NXT in a longer run than Zarya becoming champion on that night. So that should be very interesting. Gives us a lot to think about, a lot to talk about, and a lot to anticipate. But I think it has to be Jada Parker has to come away. Has to come away with something. Her coming as close as she did with Stephanie and being involved with Jordan. It has to have some type of reward. By now, and having the match that she had with Roxanne way back a few months back as well, come on.
Seriously? they've been testing her. They've been testing her. She's
even her on the mic last week. Wow. Ready.
All of her skills are exactly what you need, to take this women's division to a new space. In-ring work, promo work. She's got the look. She's got the charisma. She's got everything that you're looking for in this kind of scenario. So, and the people love her. The people love her.
Yeah, of course. Oh, for sure. Moving on to other things. It still involves NXT. But we're kind of going outside of this now. It involves Booker T. I think we mentioned it last week. We talked about it.
We did at the tail end.
We talked about it last week. But this thing has kind of continued on, even into today. And that is this whole thing with him and Swerve. Of course, we mentioned Swerve was, had an interview with Vlad TV, made a few remarks, kind of jabbing at, the likes of a Booker T. It wasn't just about him, but gave an example using a scenario with Booker T. Booker T has since, responded. He said he saw him a few days later, responded on his Hall of Fame podcast. And then we have Dynasty happens. Swerve loses to Moxley as expected. The Bucks coming out, I wasn't expecting it, but after I thought about it, it kind of makes sense. But we'll talk about that in a second. But afterwards, I believe it was on the post in the scrum after the show. He said what he said, and then decided, and in his own words, one last thing, just for my own amusement, F Booker T. Why? Why? Since then, it's been put out today, I believe, that Booker T has responded to that. And he's very, very rightly said, for me, very rightly said, and I'm slightly paraphrasing here, but very rightly said, that, you know, it's a shame that Swerve felt the need to mention him. Or, actually, he said it this way. The only thing that Swerve should be talking about after a pay-per-view is the pay-per-view.
Right.
You know, he was the last match of the show. He should be the last memory, or the match itself should be the last memory of the show. Whereas him waking up in the morning is seeing his name trending.
Right.
Not Dynasty, not Moxley, not Swerve, not the Bucks, not Hangman Adam Page, who was also involved in the match at some point, you know, but Booker T. And then went on to say, you know, I hope Swerve has a great career, becomes a champion again. And, you know, good luck to him. And that's the end of it. In your mind, can you make any sense of why Swerve would kind of continue this whole thing, even in a passing comment that was for his own amusement? Why?
So we talked a little bit earlier about the differences between why certain superstars thrive in a WWE space and not in the AEW space, and vice versa. And a lot of it has to do with vision and the producer, but also, as I mentioned, the systems that are in place. This is a classic picture of systems not being in place. It is clear that the WWE has media training for its superstars. You do not see their superstars going off the rails like this. And this is what we know. The media scrums post any AEW pay-per-view are almost always more newsworthy than the pay-per-view itself, no matter how significant the pay-per-view is. I mean, you think about it. It was, you know, this all started in terms of these things going off the rails with Punk, you know, and that whole moment that turned into a fight, that turned into all of the things, and that became the go-home place where everybody was looking for something crazy to be said. I think what has to happen here is, I mean, it's basic media training that says if you're doing an interview post-event, talk about the event.
Right.
You know,
right.
If you're working for a specific company, you talk about what that company has done, because that's the branding that's involved. We're pushing this product. These are the people paying our paychecks. Why would I sit up and spend time talking about some other company, no matter who asked the question? Go to a WWE post-event scrum or media thing. The reporters or the people who are from media are going to be attempting to be salacious. They're going to intentionally ask about something going on in AEW or something that the internet's been talking about. Take a look and study it, how these WWE names respond, from Cody to Triple H to whomever else. They are very, very careful and crafted in how they discuss these things. Many times they will talk about it and not talk about it. They will allude to something else, or they will redirect the question. Right. You know, when people spent time asking about Vince McMahon, because that was they figured out how to redirect the question. The sad part about this is nobody asked Swerve about that. Right. So this is why it's a media training issue, because it's almost like, let's go for the gotcha moment for your own amusement. You could have done your own amusement on your own socials. Very true. But you did it on somebody else's dime and platform. And so I think, and here and again, we know certain things would have never happened on certain people's watch. And even in today's WWE, there are certain things you're not going to do with Triple H at the helm. You know that. And so it is a sign to me that this is a bold statement, but I'm going to say it. They don't have the kind of respect for Tony Khan that they should have for a leader who signs their check, who is present while they're saying and doing these things. Sitting right there. Can you imagine your boss sitting 6 feet next to you, and you take time to talk about something that has nothing to do with his company.
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine it.
Mm-mm.
I cannot imagine it. So it says to me that they don't have the kind of respect that they should for Tony Khan. And for whatever you say about Tony Khan, he is still the boss over there.
Mm-hmm.
He is still the one that hires and fires. And so out of respect for his company, you're not going to sit up, or you shouldn't sit up and look to do that. The fact that he's doing that and that others have chosen to do that says a lot. It says a lot. And, you know, this war with Booker T really has nothing to do with AEW. So it shouldn't be mentioned on AEW platforms for any reason. So I think it's a sign of no media training. It's a sign of a lack of respect for Tony Khan. And, you know, I saw somewhere posted, why did people have different reactions to Kofi winning the WWE championship versus Swerve winning the AEW championship? I think it's this kind of activity that causes the two to be different. Yes, they have in common that they're black men winning the world championship, but they conduct themselves very differently.
Yeah, for me, you know, when it kind of comes down to all the things that have been said and where it all kind of, you know, started, you know, it's this whole thing of Swerve almost trying to prove himself as, in this moment at least, the front runner of black wrestling. And there's an argument for that. As I said, in this moment in time, he is the only black world heavyweight champion in the last 5 years in terms of a big company. You know, it's been mentioned that he's the only black single superstar to be in main events in the last 12 months or whatever. I think it's 5 different shows that he's been, you know, in the main event, whether that be the last match or, you know, just one of the big matches of the night. It's okay, that's cool, no problem. But at the same time, you know, you're talking about being this guy and being a part of this company who are allowing you or maybe even helping you to be in that space. But again, you're one guy coming after a guy who is, on paper, the most prolific black wrestler in history.
Correct.
So at what stage do you decide that the guy who was both the United States and world champion of WCW in its final night, who then goes into WWE and also then wins championships and King of the Ring and, you know, United States and Intercontinental and Tag Team Championships, and is still active in the company and whatever else, at what stage do you look at that guy and say, you haven't done enough? Like I struggle to fathom, and that's not to say that Booker T is his perfect guy. There's so many things that he's maybe said on his podcast and certain opinions he has on certain things that I've definitely disagreed with. You can maybe nitpick at certain things. You want to come with the whole Vince McMahon saying the N-word in his presence or to him or whatever it was, and whatnot, and apparently him not saying anything or not reacting there and then, or the way that we, you know, some of us would probably would have wanted him to. But again, if you do, again, it's nitpicking if you do. So why are we turning this into this now larger than life confrontation to where you have to mention it in a space that's not your own after a massive pay-per-view where you were in the main event?
The main event.
And, you know, that should be the lasting impression, the lasting thought coming out of that night.
Yeah.
It just baffles me and bothers me that someone doesn't consider the repercussions, whether it's something on them directly or the space of the community that you're in, being black wrestling, you know, in general, because that's what you're trying to portray yourself to be.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the front runner right now. But to do something like this, I'm just like, it just leaves a bad taste in my mouth, and I don't want to look at Swerve and only think of that. But right now, it's the only thing I'm doing. And I think for me, that's the issue.
It is, again, an issue of respect, you know, so from not being respectful of your boss who's sitting 6 feet next to you, or a wrestling legend. Booker T is a living legend. Whether you like him or not, what he has contributed to this business is undeniable, you know, and he continues to give back, whether it's weekly on NXT, where his commentary has just gotten to the point where it's like, it is strictly entertaining and you watch it for the entertainment value.
Of course.
You know, or his reality of wrestling promotion, continuing to teach students and be involved in the future of the business. You know, you look at someone like that and you think, even if you disagree with what they do and how they do it, the fact that if there was no Booker T, there'd be no Swerve, that is not hyperbole. That's not hyperbole. It is a fact.
Straight fact.
You know, and the fact that Booker had been so supportive of Swerve, you know, it's actually very scary to think that the respect value that seems so germane to so many of us is lost. People are just not respectful anymore, and that's society in general. But it's scary to think that you think you've gotten to become the first Black world champion in AEW on your own. Let's not even talk about the fact, that you could argue that he campaigned for that. And here's where my argument for that is. Because months before that was the case, he'd be in these scrums talking about, I want to be the first Black AEW world champion. Why are you telling us this? And you're not even in the world title conversation. You told us that. We heard that month after month after month. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess this is the way it's going to go. But I don't believe that it is to open up the doors for other Black stars in the company. I mean, there are plenty of other Black stars in the company. How many of them are getting world title shots? You know, are you advocating for Powerhouse Hobbs? Are you advocating for Kevin Knight, who's just been signed? Are you advocating for Athena? Are you using your platform, since you've made it, and since you feel comfortable enough to say these things about a legend like Booker T, then what are you doing to open up doors for others? And I think those are things that I'm not sure is on his radar or not. I don't know him. I've never had the privilege of having a conversation with him. But I think, you know, these kinds of moments trickle down and impact people like you and I. People who are working to continue to have a voice in this space and know what we're fighting up against because the color of our skin, because people are going to automatically look at us and have certain thoughts. So we have to fight those thoughts. And if you're a front runner, if you are, you know, the guy opening doors or whatever, then make sure that the actions that you have make it so that other people can come behind you and don't have to fight what you did.
And that's the thing. It's, you know, it's just perplexing that he feels the need to have to say what he said. And even in the interview itself, it's not like he was asked a very specific question to where that had to be the answer.
Right.
It's not like, Vlad or whatever his name is, who was conducting the interview, said, "Oh, what are your thoughts on the time Vince McMahon said the N-word to Booker T?"
Right.
Like,
Right.
it kind of came from something else. It was
Yeah.
just there, came out of nowhere kind of thing. And it's that for me that's kind of like, right, what's going on to where you feel this was right to say, it was the good time, it was the good space, it was needed, it was necessary, it was valid. Because for me, none of it at all can I justify why it was said. And that's not to say he can't have the opinion that he has.
Sure.
But it's like, where's the wisdom here?
Yeah.
Why did you feel the need to have to say that? What was it? And did you think about it? Because again, we can argue, and it can be put out there as an argument that you becoming the world champion, as much as you showed that you were great and the fans were kind of expecting or maybe calling for it, it was also at a time where there kind of was no one else.
Right. Right.
Great timing in that respect. Great timing in that respect. And even around that time, we were saying about him becoming a TNT champion or winning the Continental Cup or becoming international champion. We never really said AEW world champion. We said, okay, eventually.
Yeah.
But not at the time. This time last year, we weren't saying he has to be a world champion. We were just saying he has to be a singles champion.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like you kind of got there and you made the most of it. Granted, he made the most of it, managed to get the contract that he did. And, he pushed for it, campaigned for it in a good way as well. He campaigned for these things and stuff. Yeah. And that's great. But you're now putting a sour taste in many mouths with the words that you're saying now and the outlook that you're having, and to then respond to what Booker T said in the first place, to me was okay, fine. And then want to just throw out something for the sake, wrong timing, wrong place, wrong platform, wrong everything. And it was just like, mate, what are you doing? And it's a shame. It's a shame. But going back, we're still talking about Swerve, but going back to the in-ring, Swerve came up against Jon Moxley. I don't think we necessarily expected Swerve to win, but as the match carried on, oh my God, it felt as though it could have happened. History repeating itself. A year later, a year after he won his championship at Dynasty last year, it looked very close and whatnot. Hangman comes in. I'm like, oh my God, this Hangman thing again, which is great in terms of the long-term storytelling. But then it was the Bucks that pulled the V trigger, pun intended, pulled the trigger on Swerve in order for Moxley to hold on to the championship. As I said earlier, like that when it first happened, I was like, huh? Why the Bucks? But in your mind, did it make sense straight away? Have you made sense of it now with the Bucks kind of helping the Death Riders in order to, stop Swerve from becoming a two-time AEW World Champion?
There was a lot of shock and awe around this one. A lot. I saw. There is an influencer who was there, and as he was recording as it was happening, and when the lights went out and the lights came up and the Bucks were there, he got up and walked out and left the arena. He was like, I'm not staying for this. I'm not staying. It's recorded, so you guys could see it. If I mentioned his name, you probably know who he was. So what's intriguing to me about this is people were not happy about this. And for me, it didn't initially make sense, though, again, we fully expected Moxley to retain the championship. I think, in terms of it making sense, we probably are going to need to watch Dynamite to hear what their explanation is going to be. Does this mean that the Bucks are siding with the Death Riders? Are the Bucks endorsing the Death Riders? We've been feeling like the Death Riders kind of had somebody who was giving them orders. At one point we thought maybe it's Shane McMahon, but it would technically make sense for it to be the Young Bucks if they are still the EVPs, and that it's kind of an inside job. The question though is, has this Moxley Death Riders thing run its course? And it by far feels like the fans are saying, we're tired of this. I mean, think about this. The AEW World Championship, the title itself, has not been on our television screen since October. It has not been there. So can you imagine the WWE Championship belt being a figment of our imagination for 6 months? Absolutely no way. There's no way that WWE would have multiple pay-per-views with its champion walking around with a briefcase. Not a briefcase that you cash in, but the briefcase that represents the championship. And considering how big that championship is, I don't know how it fits inside that little bit.
Nor do I.
So I don't know if this is working on some sort of rebranding for the championship belt. I don't know, but all of it is shaping up to feel like an experiment gone wrong. And if AEW is not careful, this could significantly backfire. And they don't need it to backfire. Not as you're getting ready to go in to your big stadium event, All In, which is just 3 months away. You don't need that kind of thing happening. And so no, could it make sense? Yeah, it could. If you work that particular angle with the Young Bucks. Why aesthetically the Young Bucks would work with the Death Riders, I don't know, other than they are the ones that are giving the orders in the attempt to take their company back, right? And then you ultimately end up potentially in a Young Bucks versus, I don't know, what's his name, Tony Khan kind of situation where Tony Khan assembles his team and they eventually fight it. I don't know. But it's very, very odd to say.
For me, the very beautiful and competent friend of ours, Haven Rain, kind of made sense of it in a video that she put out, I believe, yesterday, if not this morning, saying that, of course, when the Bucks were doing their thing and kind of taking the mick as EVPs, Swerve was one of the people who was very vocal about trying to stop them and all that kind of thing. So it makes sense that they may attack Swerve. Also, as well, it felt for a while before the book kind of disappeared that they didn't want to get involved with what was happening with the Death Riders and who they were attacking and, all that kind of stuff. And they would kind of, mince away from it all and not address the situation as EVPs and all this kind of thing. So it definitely feels as though if they're not necessarily giving orders, I can't see the Death Riders taking orders from anyone.
Right.
But they were definitely accommodating it, to a point. That would make a hell of a lot of sense. That would make a whole lot of sense. And I think that's what I expect to see happening and kind of come out of the woodwork over the next couple of weeks or however long it's going to take. But I do feel as though we're going to have this briefcase or the title in the briefcase for the next 3 months until All In, if not if not the Dynamite after All In. Because I do feel as though Moxley's not losing it to anyone anytime soon. And it would actually make a bigger story if they can kind of keep things bubbling nicely. It would make for a bigger story for whoever it is to defeat Moxley at All In and free up the company, free up the belt. We see a new belt either on the night or the Dynamite after. That would make sense. But it's a shame that that's going to take the next 3 months. That's the problem.
It actually reminds me of last year's All In. Where a certain guy who I think is going to win the Owen and get that shot ended up doing the same thing. I'm talking about Will Ospreay, when he goes and he defeats MJF, who had turned the international title into the American Championship. He wins the match and then gets the original belt back, and away we go. You know, I think that's probably going to be the scenario. Will Ospreay's been talking about, hey, restoring the feeling and all of the things. And so Will Ospreay will be the guy to save AEW. I hope that the AEW fans can, you know, last that long. You know, because we still got to get through Double or Nothing, which is a major event, before we get to All In. And, you know, we'll see if they stick with the product at this point. And here's the thing. I don't think that Tony Khan is allowed to miss too many more moments. Timing wise, they've missed a number of moments when they should have pulled the trigger on things and they didn't.
Many times.
They don't have many more of those left. And I'll just say this. This is part of the challenge of building a company where you take your orders from the fans, right? Like when you take your orders from the fans all the time, you're now beholden to them. And so when the stories don't make sense, they're going to scream and holler, you know? It's honestly why Cody had to finish the story last year, because you can only, in the wrestling business, the bad guy can only win for so long. If it's too long, it ends up mirroring life. You feel like there's no hope. And if you feel like there's no hope, you check out. And so you don't want a space where they check out. So they're going to have to figure out, how do we do it? The good guys can't always win, but the good guys need to win at some point.
Yeah, of course. And I feel as though we kind of had that, as you mentioned, you know, with Cody finally finishing the story. I think we had that for, you know, a few months, up until maybe The Rock got involved, and it kind of added a bit of a curveball to the story and made things feel a bit different. But before that, I think we had that same kind of feel with Roman Reigns' title reign, you know, to where, you know, I think it was probably only Drew McIntyre, the match against Drew McIntyre, where it felt as though he could possibly lose, because everything kind of was in place. You know, it was in Scotland. It was Drew McIntyre getting his finally getting his chance in front of a crowd and all this kind of stuff. But those few months, we were getting the same thing. Roman versus whoever, and the Usos or Solo Sikoa eventually, or so-and-so, someone within the bloodline is going to attack the person and make sure Roman wins, and blah, 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 blah. And we're getting that same kind of thing. And I know it happens, and, you know, it's nothing new. We've had it and seen it before in the past with other factions and people who were champions, your Triple H's and Ric Flairs and other people in the past. And it's cool, it's okay. But we're in a different age, for one.
We are. And
also, when you look at the level of talent and guys who are in AEW, as you mentioned, you Will Ospreay, Swerve in the picture, Hangman, who's had a great, you know, year or two in the company, could easily be seen as a world champion again. We're still hearing murmurs of Darby Allin as well. You know, and maybe a few others who could possibly either step up or, you know, become that person to take out Moxley. But it's like, when you know that he's going to hold this now for the next 3 months,
right?
You're like, how,
and
what
why?
Are they going to do, and why? What are they going to do? You know what I mean? And it's a shame, but, you know, we'll see what happens. You know, there's still parts of this whole thing that kind of, you know, leave us asking questions, and that's all you want to do as a wrestling business. You just want your people to ask questions, because that's what gets them to tune in every single week or every single show. So it's cool, but it's still like, it still leaves a bit of a bad taste, and you're like, okay, right, how long are we doing this? And there's a lack of substance. I think that's what it is more than anything. There's just a lack of substance in the whole Death Riders thing. And they're also holding hostage the Trios Championship as well. And you're just like, all right, guys, all right, just let it go now. You know, just let it go. But that's where we are. Speaking of trios, triple threats, and everything else, I should just call this show Triple. Because it's just all about triple threats and madness. Bianca Belair, you know, we've had this whole thing with Bianca, Io, and Rhea. We knew we were going to get a triple threat. We knew.
Sure.
And what was interesting in all of this is not just the story itself, but that WWE before Raw yesterday, before SmackDown just gone, I believe was the first one back in the US. They had the whole European tour, different places and whatnot, and Bianca was getting booed.
Mm-hmm.
And some people interpreted it as, oh, this is just the way the Europeans view the three women that are in the ring.
Mm-hmm.
Lo and behold, when they all kind of came together yesterday on Raw, the same thing happens.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel as though it is the intention of WWE to get that reaction for Bianca at the moment, or is that kind of just a fan interpretation of the whole situation?
I think it's a combination of things. I think it's the combination of them obviously loving Rhea Ripley, really loving Io Sky.
For sure.
And I think that's a lot of it. They are not prepared. And this is interesting. So like in the male triple threat at Mania, they're prepared to cheer for all three in some way.
Easily.
But they're not as prepared to cheer for all three when it comes to Bianca, Io, and Rhea. What I love about this, though, is that Bianca's not shying away from it.
Yeah.
Bianca is leaning into it, from wearing the darker colors to just, flat out telling Rhea, shut up. You know, like these kinds of things. It's like Bianca is clearly embracing this. And that's a really good thing. What's interesting is there's this, looming story outside of this world title story that we've still not forgotten about, involving Jade and Naomi. And again, I'm not going to believe it until I see footage that Naomi pushed Jade. I know Naomi's taking credit for it, but we have phone footage of everything. We got surveillance cameras everywhere. WWE captures everybody's footage. I cannot believe there's not footage yet of somebody attacking Jade. Somebody's got to see it. It's got to be out there somewhere. So I'm wondering still, does Bianca still have something to say or do connected to whatever happened with Jade? It could mean that all three of them, Bianca, Naomi, and Jade, are in different spaces, and that's fine. But this change for Bianca would technically mean that Bianca and Naomi are on the bad side. Jade is seemingly on the good side, and that's in air quotes because of how Jade is talking. It's wild.
Yeah.
But to your point about asking questions, it's what we like. We ask ourselves a lot of questions. It allows folks like us to do what we do in terms of creating conversation. But I love the fact that Bianca is leaning into this, and she's not like, oh my God, why are you booing me? She's leaning into it. The story she's telling on socials says a lot, like Bianca is doing, and shout out to Mex, who talked for years about character development with Bianca. Bianca's doing it.
It's happening.
This is her best road to WrestleMania. She is consistent everywhere. I'm like, this is what we've been asking for. So I'm not fully mad at it.
Oh, no. There's no part of me that's mad at it. It's just being, it's the intriguing part is this intentional in for WWE? And even if it isn't, I know for a fact that they will capitalize on it, just as you just said, that Bianca herself is doing it. I believe as though, WWE will capitalize it in some sort of way, because I also feel as though the cheers that Rhea's getting weren't the intention necessarily either, because what she's doing is very heelish.
Right.
And we know that she's as popular as she is and everyone loves her and all the rest of it. But I'm sure the intention wasn't for it to be Rhea the good girl, Bianca the bad girl, and kind of more or less the other way around. But again, I'm sure the WWE also understand that we're in the time that we're in, and not everyone that's bad is gonna be booed. But if the people can make sense of why they are doing what they are doing, they're gonna cheer for it. They're gonna relate to it, cheer for it, and whatnot. I kind of almost feel as though the booing also for Bianca isn't based on what she's doing, but the perception that the general and older fans have of Bianca being forced into the high spots in a very similar way that Charlotte has had the reaction that she's had since she's returned. Because as soon as Charlotte comes back, wins the Royal Rumble in a championship match, blah blah blah. Everyone's kind of fed up of it and whatnot. Me personally, I've never disliked Charlotte in those spaces because it just makes complete sense to me. Always has. And even though, maybe one or two has kind of felt unnecessary or they could have waited or whatever, Charlotte to me, that's like one of the greatest female wrestlers ever. So it kind of just makes sense. It's almost like, having Roman Reigns come back, but yet he fights for the Intercontinental Championship while Seth Rollins and whoever else are fighting for the World Championship. Yes, there are other people who can fit that space, but talking about Roman Reigns here, it makes no sense for him to even be there if, the main event or a championship match is not in the works. So I feel as though I think it's more to do with that perception, definitely more so than Bianca's actions. And this is why I feel as though it's not necessarily the intention of WWE, but Bianca's making the most of it. Bianca's using it to her advantage in some way or leaning into it a little bit and whatnot. I don't expect a full heel turn. I don't expect her to then become, use some dirty tactics against Rhea and Io in order to win and blah, blah, blah. I kind of still don't even think she's involved with the whole Naomi Jade situation. I think it's still going to come back on her in some way, and Jade's going to have some issue with her, but I don't think she's then involved. And people are saying that she's going to side with Naomi eventually. I kind of don't even see that.
Okay.
I kind of see her, if it does carry on with her and Jade, it's going to be them two, and they kind of go their separate ways, maybe, or you know what I mean. I don't see it being 2 against 1, possibly, or 3, maybe, in a triple threat in some sort of way, possibly. But I don't think she's behind any, working with Naomi or will eventually side with Naomi myself.
Let me ask you this. When Jade Cargill signed with WWE, everybody immediately talked about the dream match with Bianca and Jade. Is that still a dream match for us?
I think it is. For me, it definitely still is.
Okay.
But for me, I feel, and I've said this from day one, I didn't even want them to be on the same brand. When Jade first came in, I didn't want them to be on the same brand. I wanted Bianca to do what she's doing. I wanted Jade to do what she was doing and kind of raise her game, raise her profile, all that kind of thing, in order for that match to kind of not make sense, because we all wanted it beforehand, so that alone makes sense. But to give it more substance, to give it, to give it more awe and all that kind of thing. It's kind of like when Bianca first came onto the main roster, it was already a dream match for her and Sasha Banks. But by the time we actually got that at WrestleMania, it felt like the biggest thing on the planet. Because of the achievements that Bianca had got to by the time she came against Sasha, who already had, accolades and championships and all the rest of it, and the aura that she had. So I kind of expected and wanted the same thing. So yes, it's still a dream match, but yet at the same time, I still feel as though Jade needs to do her own thing for a while before that one-on-one happens. And I feel, am I in the space of it has to happen at WrestleMania? Yes, it would be the biggest way. But if Jade is able to do her own thing and kind of set herself apart and, feel like achieve a few things, whether that be championships or defeat certain people over time and whatnot, then come to Bianca for a one-on-one. then yeah, I don't think it matters where it is. WrestleMania would clearly be the biggest stage for them to do it. But just as long as it makes sense, then I'm good. But yeah, it definitely still is a dream match for me. But I'm kind of fearing now it's gonna happen too quickly.
You know, I'm feeling like they are actually taking their time with this match. You know, because think about this: the Bianca Rhea match is the match we've wanted for years,
right?
And this is the closest we're getting to it, a triple threat,
right?
You know, so I still feel like that has to be a WrestleMania main event to happen. We will get the Jade and Bianca one, but I think the way in which they're telling this story right now, it doesn't make Bianca versus Jade as immediate of a need as it was when when Jade was first signed.
For sure.
And I think that speaks to great storytelling.
That's a very good
WWE's part, and the fact that we are keeping them separate long enough so that we're not fighting and cramming for that. I mean, we're getting Naomi versus Jade at WrestleMania, and we're excited about it. Like, that says a lot. And so I was curious about that, which I know we'll get to Naomi and Jade in a second, but that I was very curious about that, because it doesn't feel as urgent of a need right now as it did a year ago, which is great.
Yeah. I'm very, very happy for that. I'm very, very happy for that. But I also feel with what's going on, and because Bianca was around, obviously, you know, kind of like around the whole situation, that we may get to the Jade Bianca thing possibly too quickly. Luckily, right now, it's not the forefront. It's not the front. It's not the focus. Bianca's got her head in other things. Jade is focused on Naomi, while Naomi's focused on Jade. Let's talk about that as well. Like, the beauty of this whole thing that was almost missed and hasn't necessarily been made mention. I kind of fell onto this fact that the match between Jade and Naomi is the first ever match between two women at WrestleMania that's not a stipulation and not a championship match. The stipulation thing could still happen. Sure. I kind of see that happening, but in the past, many stipulations, and so the last time we saw a non-title between two, a one-on-one between two women, was a Playboy pillow fight. 19 years ago, between Candice Michelle and Tori Wilson.
That sounds right.
Not ladies that are necessarily, you know, associated with great wrestling. Right. So that tells you a lot. And as I said, you know, it's the first one-on-one not involving the title in 19 years at WrestleMania specifically. But also the first at WrestleMania between two women that currently has no stipulation as well. Right. That in itself speaks volumes to Jade and Bianca. For me, it also speaks volumes for the still relatively new regime of how WWE is run right now, how things are done, you know, their perspective on certain things, and all that kind of thing. There's still arguments and still little things that we could nitpick. The whole still waiting to see a singles competitor, black male singles competitor in, you know, at a PLE or in a championship space and whatnot. But with what they're doing with our women, there is very little to argue. Very little to argue. One thing I was going to mention last week, I completely went over my head. There's a little bit of a thing for me, is that all the black women are on SmackDown. Kaden Carter, is she actually on SmackDown or on Raw? I can't remember, but she was on SmackDown a couple of weeks ago.
I feel like she's on Raw.
I think she might be on Raw still. I think she might still be on Raw. But all of them are. So Jade, Bianca, Naomi, Michin, B-Fab, all on SmackDown.
Interesting
fact. makes me feel a little bit funny. Spread them out a
Well,
little bit. But they're all active as well. They're all
very
active.
active.
All active. They've all got some
Very
kind of
active.
push, all got some kind of relevance and
Yeah.
whatnot in what they're doing. Even down to B-Fab, even though she's kind of losing matches, she's being used weekly. She's been used in a space. She went against Charlotte Flair last week.
Right.
Massive.
Right.
Michin in the Women's United States Championship picture from the start. And obviously, Jade, Bianca, and Naomi doing what they're doing. But yeah, to see these two ladies, Jade and Naomi, go up against each other at Mania, no title, brilliant storyline, substance, vignettes that are great, very well worked, substance in terms of how the story is progressing week to week, and stuff like that. It's brilliant to see, and I think there's definitely a real excitement, a general excitement for the match itself. And we've taken Bianca out of the situation, and we're still feeling as though this is major.
There it is.
That's massive.
There it is.
That's massive.
There it is. Absolutely massive. Kudos to Jade and Naomi for being in a space where they are one of the most anticipated matches of WrestleMania, one of the best stories that's being told, and to be given the responsibility of having a match without a title, without a stipulation. For women, it's massive. For Black women, it's incredible. And so, again, I think it speaks volumes. It speaks volumes to where we are. And I think that, people have to be willing to celebrate the wins that are happening. There's always going to be a scenario where something could be better, right? And people want to jump on the bandwagon. Well, there haven't been any Black men on and they have to be specific with it now. Black male solo stars, because right now you're looking at the Street Profits as the World Tag Team Champions and WWE Tag Team Champions, and they're going to be in a marquee match at WrestleMania, and they've been on marquee matches at WrestleMania for the past several years, right? So if we're now getting to the minutia of solo Black male stars, all right, we're just in one of those seasons, because if you just look on WrestleMania Saturday morning, you're going to see 3 Black men main event, Stand and Deliver. And guess what? For those who have problems with it, 2 Black men main evented Stand and Deliver the year before, and there was no title on the line then. So, stop playing, guys. Stop playing. Pick your battles, because in a few years, all of this Black talent that you're seeing in NXT will be on Raw or SmackDown. They'll be in your face on USA. They'll be on PLEs. They'll be on Netflix, and they'll be on WrestleMania. So, kudos. I can't say enough about how great this is for Naomi, who has a brand new character arc. She's winning with new moves in her moveset. She looks amazing. She sounds amazing. She's got all the support you need. Jade looks incredible. This is going to be a special match. And I know that I'm saying I know, but I would imagine for sure that Naomi and Jade both are excited about this opportunity, and they're going to do all that they can to make this incredible. And this is the win. This is the win. Think about, we've had Black men. Shoot, a Black man was in the first ever main event of WrestleMania, Mr. T.
Exactly.
Okay. So what are we arguing about? Wait, and he was partnered with the main guy in WWE, Hulk Hogan. Guys, do your history and pick your arguments better than this. Pick them better than this. We're just in a space where, again, the kids in college are cooking. They're cooking. They're coming to the majors. It's happening. Stop stressing about it. Meanwhile, the real underserved community of women and Black women are being so well represented that they're getting this incredible opportunity. It's really one of the best stories being told in WWE, period.
Easily.
So let's be excited about that. Let's support this as it's happening. And let's shout these women out because they got a moment last year. We got the iconic point. We saw all three of them coming out looking like Cowboy Carter. Like, it was just fantastic. And now we get to see all three of them featured in marquee matches. And I think this is great. This is so, so good.
Yeah.
Kudos to Jade and Naomi. And I maintain Naomi's winning that match.
Interesting. I love the fact that it's not obvious anymore. It felt obvious, but it could go so many ways. There's still, I think we said this last week, if not, a few weeks before, there's still this possibility of that match or something to do with those two spilling into Bianca's match in some way.
Sure.
If it doesn't happen on, over that weekend, possibly on the next Raw or SmackDown or in the coming weeks after that, after Mania. This isn't done with the three of them. This is still going to be some sort of freeway in some kind of way very, very soon. And, we've been seeing the Black women and the three that we've mentioned in a space where, they're very much relevant. They're very much seen. They're very much on the top of the card in the women's space and have been for a number of years. We're coming from Bianca being Bianca, longest reigning women's champion of the modern era. Jade being the longest reigning, first ever and longest reigning TBS champion. 52, 53 plus or whatever it was wins before her first loss. Naomi coming from being the Knockouts champion in TNA and bringing TNA back to the forefront, especially when it came to views on a weekly basis for a very long time. All those kinds of things. And we haven't even mentioned Mercedes and Athena. And
right.
Like,
it's a great time.
What are we complaining? What are we complaining about? Just take the positives. Yes, nothing's perfect. Yes, there is a space where certain people aren't really there and blah, blah, blah. And we want to compare your Carmelo to your Bron Breakker and how they're being used and because they're coming from the same place and blah, blah, blah. Okay, I have got an argument about the whole thing with Carmelo being with The Miz. What are we doing? Anyway, but Carmelo's on the show every single week. There's still some kind of plan for him, all that kind of stuff. Like, we're just in this era where right now the male stars aren't really up there. Bobby Lashley's gone over to AEW. Okay, didn't really work out for him. We can complain about those last few months for him in WWE. Cool, whatever. It's gone to AEW. He's winning tag team championships.
Right.
Let's not. Let's not.
Right.
Let's not.
Right.
The New Day are back to kind of being, up there in the tag team division, taking out the
War Raiders
yesterday. Come on, man.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Listen, time is far gone. Very far gone, and it's good.
Yeah, it's good.
Just tell the people, apart from saying your name, you will appear. Where else can the people find you?
For sure. You can find me at Bounderfied on all of the social spaces. You can check me out every Saturday night on Saturday Night Vibe as part of All Caribbean Wrestling on Tempo Networks. Also on the All Caribbean mobile app for Roku, for Android, and for Apple. And in case you haven't heard, there's another space you can find Saturday Night Vibe now, and that is now on Triller.
Crazy.
I'm so excited about this. Lots of places you can catch us. So you can catch Saturday Night Vibe every week on Triller TV. That's just so more places to catch us is super, super exciting. You can also catch the stars of All Caribbean Wrestling as part of Sin City Burn happening next Thursday night in Vegas at 11 p.m. at the FSW Arena. A number of amazing matches are taking place there and surprises and the like. So you can be there for that. Earlier that morning, I will be a part of Ashe Vegas, which is Ashe Wrestling's debut in Las Vegas. We'll probably run through this specific card next week, but it's going to be special. And I can tell you that if you aren't able to get to Vegas, you will be able to check out the live stream of what happens at Ashe Vegas. That will become available next week. But by all means, get there because it's going to be special. And a couple of things have happened since last week, including Leon Slater versus ACH. What are we doing? And then a massive announcement is coming involving Faye Jackson and TNA Hall of Famer Jazz. So it's going to be a special time at Ashe Wrestling. Kev on stage will be in the building on commentary, as will Big Swole. I'll be there hosting and doing all sorts of other fun things. It's going to be an amazing moment. Ashe Vegas, 11 a.m. Thursday, April 17th, also at the FSW Arena. So we're getting ready for all of those things, and I hope that you guys will be there. Again, for more information, check me out at Bonnerfi.
Amazing stuff. Oh my gosh, like the next couple of weeks is about to be nuts, and it's all Easter weekend as well. And
it is.
What is going on?
Listen.
Wow. Yeah. For those that aren't already doing so, follow me, of course, on Black Wrestling Alliance on Instagram. You might catch me every now and again on X, BWA Dazzle. I might be a little bit more active over the next couple of weeks because there's so much going on. There's so much going on. I don't even want to miss out on anything. So yeah, just keep your eyes peeled. Keep those notifications on and catch us again, of course, here next week for show 199. Wow. It's going to be interesting, actually. So our show after Mania, if we can episode, it's going to be 200.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's there's going to be plenty to talk about. Wow.
That's beautiful. That is. Wow.
Yeah. That's perfect. That's absolutely perfect.
Very perfect. Oh, man. Guys, until next time. Peace.